Okay, so, well, we've got a few of you in here tonight, so we might just sort of get started really. So, welcome to part one tonight of our mini course, How to Create a Social Media Strategy. I'm Katie O'Rourke, for those of you who don't know me from Cake Marketing. And tonight's mini course, we're going to co-create with you your social media strategy. And really tonight, we're going to focus on understanding and really setting clear outlines of who your audience is. And we're going to really nail down your objectives. Then we're also going to focus on what your strengths are and identify areas in your social media and your business that might be considered weaknesses. Then we're going to look at how to unpack what opportunities might exist for you in the social media space, or more broadly marketing, and also consider what threats might be existing and how we can mitigate those. So if you are joining us tonight, I'd love to know if you have a social media strategy already. If you do, that is fantastic. We're just going to dust that strategy off tonight and maybe just give it a fresh set of eyes. And for those of you who don't have a strategy, you've come to the right place. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat where you are with your social media strategy, if you have one or if you're just really getting started. Oh, Jacqueline, great. So you're in Rio, but you're from Byron Bay. Oh yes, Brand Oasis. Of course, of course. How's things in Rio at the moment? Jacqueline, what's it like over there? And welcome Tracy from Serenity Beauty Grafton. It's wonderful to have you with us tonight. Thank you. Wow, we have such an amazing mix of different industries and businesses here. Nicole, thank you for joining us. Nicole is in education as well and is a teacher. No strategy. Sarah doesn't have a strategy but has been doing heaps of research. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. Great, but it's early. I'm sorry, Jacqueline. Sorry for the time difference. I really appreciate your commitment to joining us tonight. Matt says he's just started cracking the code of social media, having small wins through a bit more effort and understanding. Absolutely, Matt. And consistency is so needed. And Nicole, also plumbing. Fantastic. Jacqueline, no strategy. Well, you've come to the right place. So we will get into it. So what I like to explain to people though is marketing, and social media is part of that, is like baking a cake, really. And you need to have all the right ingredients at the right amounts and added at the right times in order for your marketing to work. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with a cake that basically looks really delicious, but actually tastes terrible. And so you might consider that your packaging or your marketing or your branding, the look and the feel of it. Or you could end up with a cake that is the most divine thing you've ever tasted. But at the end of the day, it's really not that enticing visually to look at. So you don't have many people wanting to pick up a slice and take it away with them. So ultimately, your strategy is your recipe, okay? And each slice of cake that you have is part of that strategy in action. And that could be social media, it could be events, it could be PR, it could be a range of different facets of your marketing. But what we want to do is we want to set the foundations right by having a really, really great strategy. Okay, so your cake looks delicious and tastes delicious all at the same time. Okay, so we've got some great insights here from all of you as to where you're at with your strategy. Some of you have some ideas and are putting some focus on it. Some are just starting out. And welcome, we've got Anoma. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Apologies if I haven't. And you're a makeup artist in Brisbane. Wonderful. And we're all just going to work together tonight. So as we go, I'm really happy for you to ask questions. All right. So if you haven't already, you might want to go and grab a notepad to make some notes from this evening. And you also might have some inspiration, so you want to capture that as we go. All right, so a little bit about me. I have over 20 years marketing experience. I know it's a little bit shocking when you put it into numbers like that. It makes me feel a lot older than what I really feel like. And I specialize in integrated marketing that is creative, but strategic, but also inspired. And that's what I love about it. And I love helping people like yourselves to create content that's compelling, tells stories that are engaging, provides your audiences with experiences, and ultimately helps you achieve your goals. In my career, I've had some amazing highlights, including the installation of a 43-metre mural by international artist Guido van Helten at the Gold Coast, Australia, which reached over 23 million people. I've also been a panellist at the 2019 Social Media for Higher Education Conference and presented there. And in 2018, I won the Destination Gold Coast Content Star Award. I have degrees in marketing, communications, and research management, and I've taught over 300 people between my roles lecturing at university and teaching marketing and branding to high school students, as well as running workshops over the years for small to medium businesses. And in addition to education and training at Cake Marketing, we offer social media strategy, marketing strategy, social media management, content creation, and website development. And now I've got to know where all of you are from. I'm here on the border of Queensland and New South Wales, and it's a little bit interesting times with literally the border at the end of my street. I like long black coffee, I'm addicted to my iPhone, and if you really, really made me choose between cheese and chocolate, then I'd have to go cheese, but I'd prefer not to choose at all. So if you don't already, I'd love for you to follow Cake Marketing on social and also receive some feedback from tonight's mini course. And don't forget to RSVP to the part 2 of tonight's mini course, which will be on next week. So at the moment, many of you might be facing closure of your physical stores, or your industry is being put on hiatus, and some of you might have even unfortunately had this experience of being stood down from your jobs. But we're also in a time when we have access to technology like we are tonight, so you can capture your audience and find new ways to use social media and other forms of communication like your e-newsletters or your website to engage with audiences. And when the time comes that we all emerge out of this, which is hopefully very soon, we'll be ready, and so will your audience. So what I want to do is kind of get back to the basics of marketing. Hi Kaylee, thanks for joining us tonight. It's great to have you here. So the easiest way I've found to explain marketing is, like I said earlier, like you're baking a cake. So with that in mind, your cake recipe is your strategy, and each slice of your cake is your strategy in action, and part of that is social media. So now more than ever, we need to connect with our audiences, and many people consider social media as a way just to kind of brag and use show and tell, or compete with their competitors, or just to make sales, but it's so much more than that. And with social media at our fingertips, we can share moments, create memories, and have conversations. And it's what I like to call the 3 Ps of social media. And for those of you who have studied social marketing in the past, you might be familiar with the other elements of marketing, but here I've got the 3 Ps of social media: conversations, connections, and community. So tonight in part 1, we'll look at your audience. We'll be setting your objectives and really honing in on your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats. Okay, so I like to think as well of your strategy as a living, breathing document. Okay, I don't want you to write one and then just pop it on the shelf and never refer to it. It needs to be kind of your go-to guide for everything. And ultimately, all of your marketing and more specifically in this case, your social media choices will come back to that strategy. So you're going to spend less time and money in the wrong places and more of it in the right places, and not get distracted by shiny things like when Facebook says, hey, would you like to boost that post? Don't boost your post. Okay, focus on ads instead. They're far more targeted and better use of your funds. If you are going to invest in money being spent on social media, do it wisely and do not boost. So there's a little free tip. So feel free to ask questions in the chat as we go, and I'll answer them. And if I miss any, just remind me at the end, okay? So first of all, let's really look at your target audience. So by having a clear understanding of who your audience is, it will help you create a social media strategy that is really focused, okay? I like to think of your audience as just a person, and you need to kind of think like them, really. So step 1 is consider the demographics. So what's their gender? What's their income? Is this income theirs personally, or is it a household income? how old are they, and also look at maybe what level of education they have. That's just some of the things you could consider in demographics. Then next we want to look at their behaviours. So we're kind of delving a little bit deeper into who your audience is now. What kind of habits do they have? Is it that they like to have a family dinner every Sunday evening? On Saturday mornings, are they at sport with the kids usually? And what actions do they take with regards to your product or service, and how do they use it? Okay. And simple ways you can find these things out are through just asking your audience. Many of you already have some connection with your existing or past customers. Okay. Step 3 in really understanding who your audience is looking at their psychographics. And I find this the most interesting, to be honest. And this is where we delve even deeper into who they are. We want to know what their personality is like. Are they type A and really organized and very methodical in their behaviors and actions? Or are they more of a free spirit? And consider their lifestyle as well. Are they family oriented or work focused? And consider as well that these things don't have to be and or ors. It could be that your audience is both family focused, for example, and also really oriented towards their work and have a really deep connection to what they produce every day as a business owner themselves, for example. And what are their attitudes and expectations? Next up, when we're looking at your target audience, we want to understand their pain points and their bliss points. So what's their problem or their pain, point of pain, and how can you solve it? So their pain point, for example, if you're a photographer, and we do have a few photographers here watching tonight, so your audience's pain point might be that they're really uncomfortable around the camera, but their bliss point is they just love moments at the beach with their family. So if they're looking at doing a family shoot, you might be able to offer packages to this audience where you are unseen, okay? And the photo shoot takes place at a distance, but captures their everyday moments that they love, that they find bliss in while they're at the beach. Okay, so do we have any questions at the moment on target audience? I just want to take a pause for a second before we move on to objectives. Is there anything there that you're not quite sure of? Okay. Next up, we'll go into objectives. If you are still writing a question, by all means, I will definitely come back to it. So please continue. Now, objectives, we want your objectives to be successful. They need to be SMART. And some of you might have heard this before. SMART is an acronym because we want it to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So specifically, as part of your objectives, you want it to be really clear and well defined and not ambiguous, okay? You want your criteria to be measurable so you can really understand where you're at in terms of how you're tracking. And for me, I like hard facts and data, which is why social media is fantastic, because there's so much insights there and analytics available behind the scenes. Is your objective achievable? Like, is it actually possible? I mean, we want to be challenged, we want to reach for the stars, but we also want to be able to actually achieve what we set out to do and it not being impossible. We want your objectives to be realistic, given the timing, the circumstances, the money that you have available, or the staffing, if it can actually be done. And you want it to be timely. So what's your deadline or time frame? Okay. And all of that makes up a really strong, successful objective. All right, we've got a couple of questions. In relation to bliss points, Sarah, how do you define that a little bit more? Okay, it's the opposite of a pain point. So your pain point is something that they might be really struggling with, and a problem that you could consider solving. But a bliss point could be that moment or that experience in time where they actually don't have any issues or any problems at all. So they're really happy in that moment or in that space. So for example, I've been working with an accommodation provider, and some of the bliss points that we identified for their target audience were time away in solitude and silence, not being distracted by social media and having an experience that's unplugged, because when we identified the target audiences, demographics, psychographics, and behaviors, we realized that they were very plugged in all of the time. So as part of what we wanted to offer was ways for them to have a bliss point that unplugged them, for example. Does that kind of explain it a little bit more to you, Sarah, in terms of a bliss point? And Penny, how do you establish your target audience? Okay, so for many people who already have a target audience, it might be simply that you have a following, for example, on social media. So you can go to your social media analytics and really start to unpack some of the details there, even if it's just basic demographics like their gender or where they live, for example. Okay, and if you want to go even further, you can look at your previous customers and maybe even look at those customers of your competitors as well to get a greater understanding of maybe not just who your current audience is, but who your potential audience is. So a little bit of market research can really help in this space, and that can be done through a few different ways. It might be a simple survey that you send out to a database. It could be through social media and using different mechanisms like on Instagram stories with a poll or questions. So there's a few different ways there that you can start to understand who your target audience is. And that's what I mean about a social media strategy as well, being a living, breathing document, because you need to keep an eye on these things because your audience might change over time and so might their needs as well. Penny, does that help answer things a little bit further? Hi, Abby. Welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight. Hi, Brad. Great to have you here. Okay. And Matt, what is M? M is measurable for your objective. So that's where we really want some facts, some data, some numbers, okay? So that you can hone in on what it is that you're really trying to move on. You want a baseline point to move from, for example. So your social media objectives should align with broader business goals as well. So you can look at how social media, for example, might help you more broadly. So if one of your business goals, and these would be obviously more measurable than what I'm saying now, but just to increase brand awareness, you might start to create some objectives that look at increasing your followers and increasing your engagement to help you have greater brand awareness. One of your broader goals for your business might be to increase sales. And so you want to look at social media as to how it can help you do that. So it might be that you start to create some objectives in your social media strategy about driving audiences from your social media platforms to your website sales pages, and looking at crafting some objectives about converting those visitors to be either conversions in sales, or whether it might be that they sign up to your database to stay as part of your community beyond just social media. Okay, all right, so just one moment. I've just got a message from someone who needs to log in. It's live now on. And apologies to anyone who got confused with the time zones. It was a little bit confusing with Facebook. It's put it at 5 a.m. on some sections and 7 p.m. at others. But if anyone's missed it, you can of course watch the replay and just message me if you do have further questions as well, of course. Hi Roman, great to have you. Okay, so coming back to our objectives, there's a few examples now that I can give you. So one example of a social media objective might be to increase your Instagram following from 4% to 7% in the first 3 months of a campaign from July 2020 to October 2020. So you need to really think about, okay, yes, that is quite specific. It's very measurable. I've got some percentages in there that I can measure against, the baseline being 4%, the goal being 7%. And I know that this is possibly quite achievable for what I want to do, considering the investment of time and possibly money I want to put into this campaign I'm going to run on social media. And it's realistic because I have the staff to run it. And also it's timely because I know I'm going to run it for 3 months from July to October this year. So there's an example of a smart social media objective. Another one might be to increase direct traffic from your social media pages to your sales pages by 5% by the end of financial year, June 2020, with an average sale of $85 per conversion. Okay, again, really measurable, very specific. It's you've looked at all the different aspects and you've decided that this is very achievable, and you've got a timeline there and a deadline that you want to achieve it by, which is the end of the financial year. Another one would be to convert your followers to join your database. Now, I haven't put any metrics in there, but consider what you might need to do to make it a smart goal about converting your business database. Hey Carly, great to have you. Thanks for joining. All right, so when you're setting your social media objectives, consider firstly, it's not all vanity metrics. Sure, it might look great to have 100,000 followers, but really, if it's not converting to sales or having good engagement, like if you have 100,000 followers and you're only getting 10 likes, it's not looking good for you, okay? What you would really love more is to have a very niche market following you on social media that is highly engaged, that is converting to sales on a regular basis, okay? And helping you achieve your objectives. Remember, ultimately, the 3 Ps of social media. We want to have conversations, we want to create connections, and we want to build a community that's highly engaged, okay? And you want your followers to be real. Do not buy bots, okay? You want them to be connected to your brand through liking your content, sharing it, commenting on it, clicking through to your website, and building a really loyal community that ultimately becomes brand ambassadors for your company. Okay, and at the moment, there's so many of us at home, whether we're working from home or looking after children and helping them study from home, or other reasons, that there's a lot of scrolling going on at the moment. And yes, Matt, database is still king. I've got that in a little bit further. Ultimately, social media is rented space. So if Instagram crashes, which it did do several times last year, how are you going to communicate with your audience? All right, so what we really want to do is use social media as part of your bigger marketing mix and get some of those people to go from being not only social media followers, but to be on your database as well, so you can communicate with them along the way. Thoughts on websites are not something you'll cover. Yes, Nicole, I haven't specifically got a lot in here on websites per se, but it is very important that you do have a website. Again, social media is rented space, so if you have a website, you really own that, okay? And if you've got good security around it, it's highly unlikely that anything will happen to it, okay? So what you want to do is you want to have a website as well, because it's great for search engine optimization if people are looking for you, and particularly with a business such as yours for plumbing, you can put the address on there, your opening hours, and all of this can then get pulled into Google, and you want to then get more testimonials from customers on Google. Because if someone is just looking up plumber tweed heads, you want to be found, okay? And it's much easier to do that if you have a website. And it doesn't have to be super fancy, okay? There's plenty of really simple websites out there nowadays through things like Wix and Squarespace that are quite easy to create. And, you know, you might only need 1 or 2 pages with your locations, your services, about you, a little bit about your company, so people know it might be family owned or that it's been in the industry for 35 years, and a whole range of other points that you want to tell them about your business. Or if it's that you specialize in commercial plumbing, not residential, or that you do both. So I think definitely having a website is an asset. If you don't have one at the moment, you can just start with social media as a way to establish a presence online. But yes, having a website as well, I would highly recommend doing that. And feel free to ask more questions as we're going, everyone. Oh boy, we're running out of time. We've still got one section to go, so bear with me. Sorry, I get a little excited and then I like to answer your questions as we go. So the third part of tonight's mini course is your SWOT. Okay, and SWOT is just simply your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats. And what we want to do is be empowered by really having a look at our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and finding out where our business is shining and thriving, but also identifying some vulnerabilities and how you can really kind of combat those along the way. So, from a social media perspective, internally, let's look at your strengths and weaknesses. These are internal to your company. So, one of your strengths might be you have amazing staff that are running your social media, okay? They know your community online and they just get it with content and they love the data. However, one of the weaknesses might be that they could find another job, okay? And then you're left holding social media in your lap, but you haven't been so connected with it. So one of the ways you might counteract that weakness is by ensuring your staff provide you with monthly social media reports, so you understand not just the data, okay, and all these numbers, but that you also understand the community, because social media managers know a lot more about your community beyond just the data. So for example, when I was managing social media for an education institution, the analytics behind the scenes looked fantastic. Engagement was up, followers were up, everything was up, up, up. But I knew from looking at our community that there were a lot of themes coming through of stress, okay, because there were exams coming up. And there was also at the time a lot of environmental issues that were at the forefront of the news, and our community online was really feeling it. So this allowed me then to look at how we could create some content that addressed these pain points. So providing them with solutions to combat exam stress, but also highlighting areas that were related to the environment, okay? And this was a really great way to tap into things that were beyond just the data behind the scenes. Okay, so then we look externally to the company, and most of this is externally, is opportunities and threats. So if we put the pandemic aside for the minute, because goodness knows that has certainly been threatening a lot of businesses. But if we just pop that to the side for the minute, let's just consider a couple of situations where opportunities and threats might be across the board to everybody, because everyone's business is being affected differently by the pandemic at the moment. So for example, new competitors into the market could actually threaten your market share. However, you might be able to turn this into an opportunity. And if you're running social media campaigns, for example, you can use Ads Manager in Facebook to target their followers on social media with your own products and sales messages, okay? So that's just one way you could turn a threat of competitors into an opportunity for sales messages through social media. Another threat is that your social media could become hacked, or that Instagram could crash, as I mentioned. And social is always rented space. So you need to really consider what would happen if Instagram decided that you have breached your terms and conditions of using the platform and deletes your account. Has happened many, many times to people. And I also know people whose business accounts have sadly been hacked, and there's been no way to reconnect with those followers. So going back to what Matt asked earlier about, is database king? Absolutely. And that's where we come back to strategy is your recipe, and all of these different elements are slices of your cake, and having a database is part of that cake. All right. You want to mitigate the risk of someone hacking your accounts also by setting up a password management system. So I use an app called Keeper that I find to be fantastic, because let's face it, we all have a lot of passwords. So consider how you could then also convert your social media followers to your database. And it might be that you set up a campaign, or you start to create a competition on social media to get those people to join your database. All right, any questions there around the SWOT? Why would Instagram shut us down? Are there guidelines somewhere? I'm scared. Yes, Matt, there are guidelines. I will find the link to those guidelines and post it. But it could be that you're posting images and types of content that breach those guidelines. So it might be nudity, for example. It could be that someone reports your account as being spam, okay? And then when they look into it, if you, for example, start sending the same message to all of your followers. So like, hi, it's Matt, book me, here's my number, book me for a gig. And you send that same message to your 1,500 followers. Okay, they could deem you as being breaching their terms and conditions. So you might want to have a look at those guidelines. So I'll find them and I'll post them here for you a little bit later so you can have a look, okay? But in the meantime, there are ways you can mitigate that. So understanding the parameters of the platforms you're using by reading those terms and conditions will help you determine what kind of content you're putting up. But I definitely stay away from anything that you think is risky, okay? So my rule of thumb with posting on social media, if in doubt, probably don't, okay? All right. Hi, Laura. Thanks for joining us. Great to have you here. All right. So by clearly understanding your audience, what you want to achieve with your social media, your SWOT, you can now really go quite confidently into creating content that's going to spark conversations with those audiences, that's going to make connections with them, and that's going to build your online community. And that's where we go into next week's part 2 of how to create your social media strategy, where we delve into creating content. But before you even get to creating too much content, you really need to know who you're talking to. What are their bliss points and their pain points? How are you solving their problems? And consider, what it is that you are able to achieve realistically through SMART goals. So you have a baseline now and you can move forward. So for all of you that already do have some social media, if you want a little bit of homework, I'd say pop into the back end of your Facebook or Instagram page, for example, and just take some screenshots or pop some numbers into a spreadsheet of your current engagement rate, your followers, your average click-throughs to your website, and a few other little bits and pieces of metrics, okay? Because once you start really focusing on your social media strategy in action, you know where your base point has been, okay? And you can also really create some objectives that are actually going to be achievable for you as a business. Because let's face it, most of us are small business owners, and you're not only the social media manager, but the HR manager and the accountant and the web manager, Nicole, and a whole range of other things. So make life easy for yourself and just grab some screenshots now or a spreadsheet, and you'll have a really great base point to go from. So for next week's part 2, we're going to really delve into how to create content, and I've got some really simple ways to create content, particularly for those people who consider themselves not creative or lacking spark, because goodness knows that happens to the best of us. So if you go to the Cake Marketing Facebook page and on our events tab, it's there. If you haven't RSVP'd, you can do that and get a reminder. It will be next Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Queensland time, Australia. And if you've got some information from tonight that you found useful, please like and comment on this video and share it with any others in your network. And before I sign off tonight though, there might be a few little extra questions I'm happy to answer for you now. If there is anything that pops into your head at a later stage, I'm most happy to answer them as well. You can post the question on the Facebook page or direct message Cake Marketing and I'll answer it behind the scenes for you. Whatever you're most comfortable with. And Matt, I will find that guidelines for you, so I'll just make a note of that now. All right. Any last minute questions? Thanks, Cameron. It's great to have you join us tonight. And thank you, Michaela. All right. Well, loads of useful information, have been widely taking notes. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, Carly and Steve. That's great. Well, it's been wonderful to kind of chat with you tonight, and hopefully I'll see you all next week on Tuesday, 7 p.m. Queensland time, and we'll really delve into some content creation. Okay, so no need to be scared. I'm going to have some practical tips and tricks and hacks for you, and you don't need to be creative. We're going to nail it together. All right, and I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks. Have a lovely evening, everybody.